Hi, I'm Jessie Walters from Charles Rutenberg. I'm here today with DeLynn Gaston from the mortgage firm. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks.
And the mortgage firm, what are we going to talk about? Mortgages.
How exciting is that?
So all the questions you guys wanted to know, we're going to try to answer. We were talking prior to the show starting. We were basically talking about availability and what's available in the market and how that there is a shortage. So we were talking a lot about sometimes first-time home buyers need to buy homes that are less expensive and there's hardly anything for sale, which brings us up to the subject of mobile homes, manufactured homes. Yeah.
Just seems to be that there's a lot more of those out there lately. Because of the price points of where they are, those are lower priced. So that's where people are getting into the market. You know, I was just talking with some people in the office the other day, the whole Port Richey Regency Park area, probably a year ago you could buy a house over there for just over $100,000. And now everything's about $100,000 higher. So now those same kind of things, instead of being $100,000 starter homes for our first-time home buyers, now those are $200,000.
Right.
I don't know that qualifies as starter home anymore.
I know it's sad because I know there are a lot of, even when I have friends and customers, I'll go through Publix and if you get anything around 125, let me know. And I'm like, okay, I'm so sorry.
I know.
I'm not seeing 125. I'm so sorry. I know. Yeah, I'm like, if you have a down payment of 125, but
then I got you.
I got you all day, and we'll get you right hooked up. But yeah, so we were talking about the how to get them in or what the procedure. So it's kind of the same procedure because you're getting them pre-approved. You're getting for this amount. And then there's a couple of different things that you don't expect, I think, with mobile homes, manufactured homes versus single-family residence cement block homes.
Right.
And so we were going to hit on that a little bit.
Right. And I always like to go over those kinds of things. So the manufactured home guidelines, basically, just some loose things. So as far as credit score requirements, those are usually a little bit higher on a manufactured home. And one of the reasons I should probably back up to why. Why are the guidelines stricter on manufactured homes than regular houses? So the reason for that is during the real estate crash of the mid-2000s there, believe it or not, Fannie Mae, oops, sorry, that would be my alarm going off.
Yeah, you need to be here with me. That's all right. Wake up.
Hello. We use our phones for everything, right? It's an alarm.
I know, I was taking notes on mine, exactly.
Anyway, okay, so the manufactured home guidelines. So here's how that works. So first of all, the reason why they're more restrictive on the guidelines is because during the crash of the mid-2000s there, believe it or not, when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, when all those foreclosures were going on, remember when all those homes were being foreclosed on, they went to foreclose on the house. And even though one of the requirements is the wheels and the tongue have to be removed from the property and has to be tied onto, permanently removed, the VIN number, retired, people literally put the wheels and tongue back on the house, hooked it up, and drove it off the property.
Wow. Yeah.
Is that crazy or what?
Yeah.
So that's why they're very restrictive on manufactured homes. So credit score requirements are a little bit higher. Every lender has their own credit score requirements anyway, but don't be surprised if they're just going to be a little bit higher. You can do either conventional loans, which you've heard of, which is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, or FHA or VA programs. All of those will do manufactured homes. Real quick, the other thing I wanted to mention was the difference between manufactured home and prefab homes. Okay. There is a big difference there, and a lot of people don't realize that. A manufactured home is what you would refer to as a mobile home or something. It's either a double wide or a single wide, sometimes triple wides. I even heard they're 2 stories these days. I've never seen one, but I've heard they're 2 stories in some cases. Anyway, and the property has a VIN number. Just like your car, it has a VIN number. And it's usually brought to the property in whole or in half. It's, cut in half, and half at a time is brought, and then it's there, and both sides buttoned together, and everything is nice. A prefab home is, I call it almost like Lincoln Logs or Legos or something. This is a house that the walls were actually built in a factory or whatever, but then they're on a flatbed. So instead of being a manufactured home driving down the road like this is all piled up. It's all piled up like little Legos. And you get to the property, there are those put together desks that you can do, you can buy those at.
That's what it does look like. It's true.
And then it has like a worksheet of how to put them
when they
together.
get together, you can't tell, but there's one right when if you go to Fred Howard, I remember them putting it together.
Really?
And walking through, and the walls seemed to me to be so thin, but they were all the prefab walls and stuff like they're like super insulated walls.
Oh,
And they said
cool.
that they get really good as far as energy ratings and stuff like that.
Now,
But
I didn't even know. I lived right down the street from Fred Howard Park for 18 years, and I didn't know there was a prefab house down there.
You go right
Are you
in
gonna
the
tell me
entrance,
it's
it's on the left.
The last house on the,
Well, they built down that little street. So like,
Oh,
say,
yes, down that little street there. I know the little street you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to live there too. That's another conversation. I used to live on Riverside Drive. I grew up in Turpin.
Oh, that's so funny.
Like
Yeah,
our
we were right
old
there,
stomping
too.
grounds.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so the prefab house has never had a VIN number.
Right.
That was just so that's the biggest
And
difference.
then when you were saying you bring them in with the tongues, literally, I mean, I'm sure people have seen them driving down the road. You'll see a half of a mobile home, and then you'll see a guy with the flag behind it, and then you'll see another half of a mobile home with the flag behind it. And that's the two parts that they're going to put together. And the tongue is basically the what they're towing it with.
Right.
So
Right.
just to put that, just because some people are like, what's the tongue on the
Yeah.
So it's all the stuff that you don't know until you sell one.
Right.
And then you're like,
Right, and then you're an expert.
yeah, yeah. What do you mean? Some of them they have two titles, because they're transporting. Well, unless it's single wide, then it has
Right.
one title, and then they make them real property as part of the land. It just gets kind of confusing, so it's good to have someone who knows.
You
about
have
what
to.
you're
You
doing.
absolutely have to. That's what I was going to say. You absolutely have to have somebody who knows what they're doing with those because there is a lot of extra little. It's not just buying a regular house. There's definitely a lot of extra little loops and hoops and things like that. And you bring up the title. The title has to be retired. Must.
Yeah.
Has to be taxed as real property, which means you're going to get a tax bill in the mail every single year for the real estate taxes.
And that
on the
real property, the reason they're doing that, which you already know, but when they say they're going to make it real property is so that they're basically saying that house isn't going anywhere, that it's part of the parcel, so that you can't rip it out of there.
Right.
So that's probably why.
Which brings up the other thing that we were talking about, manufactured homes. This is big. Once it's put on the property and the title's retired, it can't move.
Right.
So sometimes people will come and, well, if I take this and I move it to our land or something like that, or I move it over here, move it from a park, a lot of times, I want to take my house with me and move it to my land.
So the one
can't happen.
My brother had one for sale. We went to, and I've sold a lot of mobile homes before, and I got to learn the hard way that my brother there was a mobile home there. He pulled it out. He put this new mobile home in. It was a repoed mobile, so it had been on a parcel prior, and then he moved it to the used one to this new parcel that his parcel. And then we went to sell it FHA, and they said, nope, you cannot have a mobile home that was somewhere else, repoed, and then put in. So that was and so we did learn the hard way, but I think that's how you learn when it comes to the mobile homes. Like a lot of the stuff, you don't realize there's so much,
and it
entailed.
changes. And I got to tell you, it changes a lot too.
Yeah.
A lot of these changes that I'm talking about came as a result of the crash.
Yeah, true.
So,
Yeah, because, in the crash, there was people just in normal single-family residences just ripping the cabinets off. So
I
it
know,
makes,
right?
and the fans and the
the
knobs
copper
out
of the walls and selling
crazy.
the copper. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then it would get me because the copper, they would, at the end of the day, I think most people would get like $100 for the copper, but they wrecked the whole house, cost thousands to put it all back in. It's like one of those, don't get me started. But everybody was like, this is my house and I have to lose it. I'm taking everything with me, which was, the mentality, which you do feel like that, and you're hurting. You know what I mean? You're like, I'm going to take as much as I can with me or get as much back out of this house.
Or they were just destroying it because they were so mad at the bank, which is really sad too. They were so mad at the bank for foreclosing on them and not working with them to try and get through this difficult time that they just trashed the house.
We've seen a lot of houses with as realtors. You see the mortgage side, but there was many with, spray paint,
Cuss
stuff.
words?
Yeah. I won't go into the words that were on there. They weren't greetings like welcome. Yeah. I was like, you're going to have to use some kilts in here to get that off. I was like, it's never, some primer, But they even did it on the countertops, the walls, it was a sad time, but
And the thing is that the bank doesn't see that.
yeah, exactly.
The bank never saw that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's sad.
I know.
But so I can see why they would make it.
Lenders, we weren't popular back
Yeah,
then.
yeah. Now you guys are like at 3% interest. Everybody's like, yes, you guys are back in. You're making up for it.
We're making up for it.
Yeah, because there was some lenders I was like, no, do not go to them. There's still a couple, which I obviously won't say their names, but if my customers have them and I'm like, they're approved through, and I say, no, and then I had one the other day and she said, oh no, it's already gone through underwriting and you ended up having to pull the file and you closed for her. Yeah. So my customer, the Scotts,
yes.
She won't care if I say her name,
yes.
but her
yes,
lender
yes.
was a very big lender and it was supposed to be all underwritten and all done. And that was a nightmare. She lost the house, everything just because she went to this big lender who, again, still from 2002, I still don't like them. They're still on my bad list. But yeah,
that's what people don't realize is when, it is so important. And I'm not just saying because I'm a lender, but it is so important to make sure you're with somebody who really knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that can go wrong.
Yeah. And people check references like, you're about to buy a new car and you're like, is Nissan good? Is Toyota good? So why wouldn't I check my lender references? Your local lender, your person that you're going to use, why not Google them and see if they have stars or see other people's experiences, or talk to your realtor and say, if they say, well, I had a bad experience with them, don't go with that, and take their advice. And because I think a lot of times they just see this wonderful interest rate and at first people are very good, but then it's like every time I tell them, don't go with them, they can't be found, So the lender, they start the process and it seems like 10 days prior to the closing, there they are, and then they're trying to get everything done.
I know.
And it's a nightmare, So,
Or people mistakenly will go to their local bank.
Yeah.
Because they think the teller that they see every single
she's gonna help
week,
you. Yeah.
like she's doing their mortgage. No. Meanwhile, they're somewhere in North Carolina.
That's exactly. I was about to say, they're always in North Carolina. Not that I love North Carolina, but that was the last one too. I was like, where are you guys located? Because I was at one point, because I'm used to you, and I'm like, I'll just go down to the local office. Where are you guys located? We're in North Carolina. I'm like, you're in North Carolina because you're hiding from me. I'm coming to yell at you guys,
I know.
But yeah, so it's nice that, it's not nice, but it's good that they have, restrictions for, like you're saying, the mobile homes to protect the lender and to protect you too at the same time.
Absolutely.
Make sure, because some of the restrictions on mobile homes are worse than the single family residence. Make sure it's secured, everything is good. So so go into some of the, so when I have a customer going into purchasing a mobile home, they're just looking cosmetically.
Right.
And so it's kind of like a misconception that this house looks good, it's solid, and I think the cutoff year we were just talking about for financing was like
1976.
Okay,
so it has to be a double wide, and if you're going to get any kind of financing, and again, this would be FHA, VA, or what's called conventional, which is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. If you're going to get any kind of financing on the home, they definitely have some strict restrictions. 1976 or newer, it has to be. Anything older than that. And there's some lenders who won't go if it's older than 15 years old.
Yeah, so I've
some
had that
stuff
before too.
definitely isn't. So what I'm talking about is what we call agency, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, as well as the FHA and the VA. They have, these are the guidelines. We pretty much follow those, but some lenders have what's called overlays, and they won't do it if it's older than 15 years old.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why. We will go all the way down to 1976, so it has to be 1976 or newer, has to be a double wide or larger.
Yeah, no single wide.
No single wides, right? It has to be wheels and tongue, as we talked about, permanently removed and on some sort of a foundation, and it has to have skirting around. We don't want to be able to see underneath it. So we want to definitely have that protected is what it is, because that's where all of your pipes and things like that for your septic system, for your water and everything is going to the ground there, right?
Yeah,
so we want to make sure that's protected. So that's why the skirting of some kind or foundation has to have permanent tie downs. So when when they
Yeah.
put it on there, it has to be tied down properly, and it has to meet HUD standards. HUD stands for Housing and Urban Development. People think it stands for FHA. No, Housing and Urban Development, which means the conventional loans, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, as well as VA, as well as FHA, everybody has to meet those guidelines.
right.
Standard guidelines that have to be met.
And so the last one that I did was kind of actually it was a nightmare, but to be honest with you.
So many of them are.
Yeah. So we didn't have, so some of the skirting was loose, and then we didn't have the proper straps because the house was in 1885, but it didn't have the straps because you have to have, the actual inspection, and it shows the straps missing.
Right.
So then we had to have a company come out, and there's companies that specialize in these straps now, I got to find out, and they come in and they give you a price, and you have to have a seller and a buyer, depending on who, that are willing to pay, or someone's willing to pay for this to come out. Then you have to have obviously everything put back the way they found it. If you don't have the skirting, you need to get a price on the skirting too,
Yes.
So, but the straps, and that's for the buyer's protection, so that if a hurricane comes through, it's not
Right.
the Wizard of Oz going on there, So, yeah, so that's, and it sounds, and people buying it, they're getting all frustrated, but it's definitely to protect everybody,
Absolutely.
The lenders want to lend on a house that's actually structurally
Going to stay there.
Yeah. Going to not fly up in the air, and you guys want to live and not,
Right.
move across town by accident.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so there's that. But, and then there's also, we were talking about too, there's the skirting, there's the measuring for wells, where your wells.
Setbacks, right?
Right.
So your well, if a lot of times manufactured homes are out in the middle of nowhere, right?
Right.
They're certainly not in
Yeah, residentially,
residentially,
neighborhoods, yeah.
more populated areas. They're usually out in the country somewhat. So usually there's septic tanks and wells. Well, there's definitely strong requirements how far apart those have to be. And of course, this is all to protect you, the buyer,
Right.
because who wants your septic tank next to your well?
Right.
No,
Yeah, we can do that math on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's also, I was saying that on break, that so also when you're putting new installation in, if you're buying a piece of land and you're like, I'm going to buy this land and I'm going to pick where my stuff's going to go. It's also depending, if where your neighbor's septic is,
Right.
and your neighbor's well. So again, you don't want your neighbor's well next to your septic. So
Right.
I always tell my buyers, if they can't find the septic, I actually always say, look for the greenest grass. That's where but also look at your neighbor property. You walk, if you're pulling up and there's a well, and you pull up, most likely your well's in the front. If there's a well, and then the septic's in the back. But if you see nothing, and then your well's in the back, then your septic most likely, you know what I mean? So it's kind of you can figure it out, but it's not something that comes natural where people are like, why do I even need to know this,
Right.
And you would think that the survey, they would just say, okay, here's your well here, but they don't. Sometimes they mark it on there, something with the request, So we had one, and we were out there. That's what I was saying. We were literally shoveling to try to find it. They wanted the well marked. I don't know exactly what happened, but they said it has to be marked. So we were out there. It was like 8:00 at night. It was a nightmare because they were coming the next day, and but we found it. And we got scared because we thought it was on the other person's property and stuff too.
Oh, that would
But-
have been a big nightmare.
Yeah, a nightmare. But it turned out good. But we're going to take a quick couple minutes break, and you guys won't. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back. I'm Jessie Walters from Charles Rutenberg. I'm here today with DeLynn, Gaston. We're talking about mortgages, and we're talking about mobile homes, manufactured homes. Just because of the market being so high, a lot of buyers, are still obviously needing homes to purchase and relocating. And it's not that they, I think, want to buy. It's because they need to buy.
Right.
Everybody needs housing. So we're just opening up the spectrum of what's available. And on mobile homes and manufactured homes, the differences for lending.
And
Right.
there are so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. From a regular house. So the other thing, so we were talking about the setback requirements for well and septic and things like that. And not only, as you brought up, from each other, but
Right.
from the property lines
Right.
and your neighbors, because, you know, so we're just saying this, be cognizant if you are considering property that has well and septic, whether it's a manufactured home or not. These are definitely things that you want to be
Yeah.
aware of. But on the manufactured home, definitely stricter. The other thing is your water testing that has to be done.
Yeah.
We're talking about that as well. If you have a well, the water has to be tested. And again,
By
this
an
doesn't make it,
independent person.
as
So-
Jessie found out.
Yeah. So for years, I was just saying this on the break. For years, I've always done my own water testing to save my sellers or my buyers money. I'll go out there. I know how to do it just like a professional. I mean, it's pretty impressive that I can bleach the faucet, let it run for all the time. You run it all in the house, do all that stuff. Get the little water testing. It costs me about $8 depending on what they want tested, up to $25. Drop it at the county. Within 3 days, I've got it back. I know what I'm doing, professional. And then the last mobile home I did, the lender called and asked who did the water testing. Well, you have to fill out all the forms. Of course, I did the water test. So I said I did, and they said, well, you're not allowed to do the water testing. You have to get an independent water test. So I knew that there was independent water testing. I just didn't want to spend $100 or have my customers. I was just trying to save them money. Yeah. So I just had spent the water testing myself, and then they had to purchase the actual. It was I want to say it was 110 because we had to rush it then because I'd already wasted like a week doing it myself, trying to save everybody money, But so water testing is important. But we were saying too, septic, it's not testing, but septic inspections aren't required by the lender, but that's a nice thing to have done.
You
just in
should.
case.
You absolutely should.
Yeah.
The only time a lender is going to, the only time a lender is going to require it is if the appraiser says something.
Okay.
But of course, by the time the appraiser rolls around, we're several weeks into the process, right? Especially these days,
Yeah, true.
An appraisal might be ordered right up front, but by the time it actually
You get the
happens,
inspections and
right. So it could be a few weeks into it. So I usually I tell people, and I know that you do too, you know what? It doesn't hurt. Just get it done. Just spend the money and get it done, because it could save you, like I was telling you during the break, one of my clients, $7,000.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
Septics have gone up a lot because it used to be, just guessing, I would say, oh, it's going to be between 3 and 5, but now it's between 5 and 10 most of the time. Sometimes higher if they have mound systems, to redo.
Seems
more
everything
expensive.
is between 5 and 10.
Yeah, I know, right, exactly.
I know
what happened.
I don't know.
I know. Yeah, the prices, everything, it's relative. The prices of the housing went up, but then
I know.
so did everything that has to do with them, from wood to cement to everything,
Yeah.
But so if you're getting your inspections done, you want to add, a lot of the termite too. I usually say, because they are wood frame, they're metal, but they do have the wood, not frame, but they do have wood with the metal in between,
Right.
the actual framing inside, not actual being just a wood structure. So it's good, it's good to get a termite inspection too. Home inspection, termite inspection if you want, and
Always.
then septic inspection is a good one too. And then water testing, the funny thing about well water is they'll say, oh, there's if there's a bacteria in it. Sometimes people get scared about that, but they can treat the well water. So they'll have, they'll say, well, this came back and there's this, whatever, and and they'll say, do you want it treated? Well, then of course they come back out. But literally I've seen them treat it, and it's bleach in the water. It's I want to say it's like a cup of bleach, and they put it in there, and then it has to sit for so many hours. And have you ever seen it treated?
No.
So, because I was thinking it was going to be like hazmat suits, and so I was like waiting for them to come out and treat it, and they pour bleach in your well, and then they let it sit for so many hours. I mean, don't quote me on this exactly. And then they run the water in the house. And I tell everybody who's purchasing the house, if you don't have blonde hair, you might want to not wash your hair for about a week. I don't know. It doesn't look or the bleach-like material could make your hair turn blonde. But that's how they treat the wells. And apparently, it kills everything in it. And then it's drinkable and stuff again after a while. But don't quote me on exactly those days. I don't even went out there drinking bleach.
I know.
Call a water professional.
Definitely call a water.
Yeah, and that's how I got fired of my water testing days. That's how I got my other job taken away. But yeah, I did, in the past, for the last 15 years, I've always, if
Done
someone
your own.
needed water testing, I would actually do it myself,
Yeah.
But it's, so you have your water testing, which is 100% of the time now, right? If they have, on the lending?
If there's a well, there's water testing.
Water te-
But there's different levels of what's required.
Right.
So like conventional is the least requirements of all of them. VA is the strictest.
Right.
So VA wants like 7 different kinds of tests
Yeah.
done, whereas conventional is like 2.
Yeah, because they'll ask for the bacteria and in the conventional, and I forget that, but then they'll ask for metals, I think, in the other one.
Yes.
Something, it gets really,
Yeah.
it gets pretty intense with all the, but for a water testing person, they just come out and do it. And, you know, I have a great one that came right out and saved me when I had the little mess up. In fact, I even called Barry on that, and he was like, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "But I've been doing that." And he's like, "No, they shouldn't have let you."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay."
I know. One of the many things that, yeah, I know. None of us, and we're not allowed to do it either. So
Yeah.
the lender can't do it, the realtors can't do it, the seller can't do it, and the buyers can't
Yeah,
do
and
it.
it makes
Has
sense
to be
because
a
you could
total
literally
third party.
run water
Yes.
somewhere else if you were dishonest. It does, so it does
Yes.
make sense. You know, I
And
get
that's
it.
the sad thing. All of these guidelines and rules and regulations that I'm talking about, that all these changes, it's all come because there's some bad people out there. who,
Yeah,
right?
they're in there buying Publix water, and here's your water
That's
test.
what they do. Yes.
Yeah.
They just, just
Well, God forbid
illegal.
something happens with your client then, and you have done something
Mm-hmm.
with the water to make it acceptable, then you have a problem, you know,
Right.
because you were messing with stuff. But yeah, you have to be ethical, and that's why we have ethics training. Like I think it's I don't know how many. It's like every 18 months. We have a lot of ethics training.
Yeah,
with
we
real
have ours
estate.
every year.
Yeah, so it's good though.
It is good.
Reminds the baddies to be good.
I know.
putting a
Reminds them,
layman's
get
term.
out of the business.
Yeah, exactly.
No
Yeah.
more. You don't belong.
Yeah, and you know when you were talking about setbacks, people might not know. So this is your plot of land, and a setback is going to be the property lines, and this is your rear setbacks of your house. So if your house is here, rear setbacks are from the property line to whatever it is the setback has to be. So
There you
if
go.
your septic's in the back, you got your property line, and then you're going to count the feet to that septic field.
Yes.
And then obviously, depending on which, because, and it's the same with single family residences too, like if you're building an addition and you say, oh, I'll be able to fit this back bedroom here. I'm going to buy this house and we're going to, put this huge room on. And then they find that they can't encroach the property lines with the, you know what I mean? They can't,
Yes.
there's 5 foot on this
Yes.
side, 5 and 10. It depends on which neighborhood you're in. I mean, some of them, I have them by heart, but a lot of times if you look at the other neighboring properties, you can kind of see, where the things are situated, where we're looking for wells and septics, where's your neighboring well and septic. But if you think you can build a huge room on the back and you're in a single family residence, not a mobile home area, but you look in the back and there's nobody has any structures that close to the property line, use that as your guidance, but then also call the county too to
Yes.
find out. And what they were saying about the property lines too, when you're pulling that, you're doing that survey, it's at the end, but they're wanting the septic, how many feet off the property line? You said 10?
10 feet.
Yeah, so in 10 and then 10 off each side too? Or, oh yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you have to have not a good sized lot, but a good location of it at least, So I would say the newer mobile homes probably have less problems with, when you get into like you were saying 1976, I think they
Right.
kind of were like, let's put the septic there, Might have some problems, but
And that's the thing. A lot of these guidelines have changed over the last 20 years, right?
Right.
So if they're older homes before 1980 or even in the 80s or something, yeah, they were just, let's just put it here. Let's just put it here. And no, everybody was fine with that because
Yeah.
there weren't all these just like anything else in life, if there's a way of somebody doing something maliciously, they'll find it.
Yeah.
Or somebody can sue somebody.
Right.
Oh, my neighbor's, septic system crossed over into my lot and,
Yeah.
affected my well, and I'm going to sue them for, $1 million.
Right, exactly. Right. And then
That's what happens.
And then who approved
It's the
it?
lawyer's fault.
Yeah.
It's just the lawyers.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with us, right? Yeah, well, that goes back to like a whole wormhole of issues because you in the beginning you put this mobile home and then who pulled the permit and then the
Right.
county approved it and then your septic's here and then so it has to be your septic has to be so many feet from your neighboring septics, and that's where I get my whole if there's wells in the front, most likely there's on all your
Right.
neighbors or wells in the front, unless you have really big parcels. Then they'll put the wells maybe on the side and
Right.
if you have a larger, like an acre parcel or something like that. But if you're going into where it's kind of looks like it's plotted, like they all look kind of standard, you can kind of figure it out where
Right.
where they are and stuff. So
But these are just some things that we're just trying
Yeah.
to give people just an awareness. It is different buying a manufactured home than it is buying a regular house and some of the
Right.
things. So you were also talking about, adding on. Somebody buys a house and, we can put an addition on the back of it. So going on to that, a lot of people do that as well with manufactured homes. They're either going to put like a carport off to the side, right? Or they want to put a lanai on the back,
Right.
or they want to put a nice deck or a wheelchair ramp or something like that. Anything that gets added onto that manufactured home after the day it was put there, after the day that the home was put there. If they added a porch, if they added a wheelchair ramp, a deck, a lanai, like I said, anything like that that was attached to that home, it has to have an engineer come out and inspect it. So that is pretty much almost every single manufactured home that I've ever done requires an engineering report because something's been added, something
Right.
has been done to it. And what they're doing is the engineer is coming back out to make sure that whatever addition was attached to the house has in fact been inspected and meets HUD standards, HUD guidelines, Housing and Urban Development, remember.
Right.
So there's definitely strict standards that have to be met, and they have to adhere to those.
Right, that's interesting to know. And that number of the gentleman who does that, I have to get that because
Yes.
I think because I sell so many single family residents that when I do sell a mobile home, that's like one of the things I don't even like. I was actually thinking,
I know.
them doing the straps, restrapping it underneath too.
Right.
That's another I'm always like, oh gosh, what year is this after my customers love it and we're down to
Right.
the nitty gritty. So it's good. It's a good little checklist actually to have.
It is to know,
Yeah.
and I try and tell people. So manufactured homes, they're great, and everybody loves them because usually the price point is lower, right?
Right.
And they're all nice and they're all done on the inside
Yeah.
already. You don't even have to think colors because
Right.
the colors are done for you.
Yeah,
And if you like the
exactly.
colors, you're
Yeah.
good. But they definitely have a lot of extra hoops that have to be jumped through. They're a little more costly in interest rate and a little more costly in fees because of things like we have to get the engineering report done more likely
Right.
than not, things like that. So, and there's definitely some engineers in our area. We do have somebody that we recommend to people
Yeah, that's great.
a lot. So, and I'll definitely share that person's name
Yeah, and
with
I'll
you.
give you the guy that does the strapping guy. I'll trade
Yeah.
you phone numbers and
Yeah, we will.
yeah, because they help you out, especially when I think you just assume it's all good. You assume that every time I sell one, I assume this one will not need straps, and then when I have the new realtors that I mentor, they call me and they say, oh, this one needs straps. And I'm like, what year is it? 1980. And then in my head, I'm like, of course it does. But like the newer ones, like the 1985 and stuff like that, I'm always on the fence. Like, will they beat a code or not? I'm always not, just a little bit on the edge, waiting to see if they think they're good enough or
Right.
not. So yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit of a nightmare. And the other thing that was a nightmare was so depending on how old it is, the little plate.
Data plates. I was going to get to that next.
Okay, so yeah, so we had to
So-
find that on an old mobile
Yes.
home, and a lot of people cover those up apparently.
Well, let me tell you. So, and
It's
I
like
try
a
and-
tag.
I
It's like a
try
little
and-
baby tag.
Yes, and there's two. So I try and tell people this right up front when people tell me that they're buying a manufactured home, and I try and tell all of the realtors who are involved with these, the very, very, very first thing to do is look for the data plates. Like
Right.
before you even write a contract, look for the data plates on there to make sure that they're there. So if it's a double wide, sometimes there's two data plates. There's a metal plate
Yeah,
on the
there is.
outside, and it's on each side of the home. In addition to that, sometimes there's only one.
Right.
In addition to that, though, there's always a data plate on the outside of the house, sometimes two. And there's always a data plate on the inside of the house.
Right.
And generally, it is on the inside of the kitchen cabinets. And it's not a metal plate, it's a piece of paper. And it might be laminated laminated or something, and it's
Oh,
on the
inside.
inside,
Yeah.
and it's got on it all of the manufactured, the VIN number and all of the requirements and the dimensions and all of that stuff. It has all of the pertinent
your
information.
Customer has redone the kitchen cabinets.
That's what I was going to say. What
Yeah.
we're running into a lot yesterday or lately, and it just happened yesterday
I
on
had
one of them that I had.
Yeah, I had the whole nightmare
They
experience.
replaced the they remodeled
It
the
looks
kitchen.
so good,
It looks
but-
gorgeous, but you took the data plate away.
Right.
So now what do, right? So as a lender, it's a requirement. We have to have that data plate.
And if you find the one data plate, so so it came each side. So it's the same thing. So basically there's a title and a title until they, attach to your property.
right,
So
and
usually
surrender
if you
those.
find one data plate or data plate, it'll be one digit away. The other one usually is, so I got to find that out the hard way too.
Okay.
So
See,
like
I
if
didn't
you
know
find-
that. I never read the number.
Yeah, so it turned into like we were looking everywhere for this thing. But so if you have 504 and you can't find either 505 or 503, you can kind of find it by, only because I think you have to call is it Tallahassee? I had to actually call.
I think it is Tallahassee.
Yeah, I had to call because we couldn't find it, and then we found, it was like so we had to get it directly from the state, and that took a while longer. So, and we had the one that I had that had the straps, that we couldn't find the well, that we had to have the water retested, that we had to couldn't find the data plates.
All the
Yeah.
bad things in one
In one house.
one transaction.
It was real estate 101, which I mean, I've done it on one. I've had one on one house. You know what I mean? But I haven't had it all. It was a
All of
trifecta.
them.
Yeah. So
the perfect storm.
yeah, and it was oh gosh. But anyway,
And an out-of-state lender. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
was it? And it was 6 months. It took us 6 months to close. So we had a 30
Oh my gosh.
30-day close. It turned into 6 months, and but anyway, we did get them in, and all the neighbors are so they even called me because they loved the people that bought it. They said, "Oh, these new neighbors are so awesome and great," and so it turned out as a happy
nice.
story. Yeah. But I'm trying to think. All the nightmares these are just normal things like a checklist, but they
Right.
can be a nightmare if you don't expect it or know where to get it.
And
you
I
know?
was just going to say, so, and I'm telling you, and I'm telling your audience, and I'm telling realtors and all of my clients as well, these are the things that you have to know going into a manufactured home that people just don't know, and they don't even think twice about it.
Right.
And a lot of real estate professionals, until you've done one,
Right.
they don't know about it or think about it either. I have some real estate agents who say the very first thing I do right now is go and look for the data plates.
Yeah.
Because they learned the hard way. So
Right.
because here's what the appraiser is required to look for those data plates. And if the data plate is missing, like we said, they replaced the kitchen cabinets, or somebody just tore it off or whatever, thinking, I don't want this on the inside of my cabinet. So then the data plate is missing. Well, normally as a lender, we don't find out that it's missing until the appraisal comes in. And as we were saying, sometimes appraisals are taking 2 weeks these days. So by the time the whole process starts and you get your inspections done and then the appraisal and then it comes in 2 weeks, we could be 2 to 3 weeks into the transaction, right? A half a month
Yeah.
has gone by already. Out of your 30-day close, 15 of those days are already gone before we find out, oh, there's no data plate.
Right.
There's no data plate in the
Yeah,
kitchen. There's
so-
no data plate in the laundry room. That's the other place it is, in
and
the laundry room closet.
and the
water
electrical box
heater,
I would
yes.
put too, yeah.
Those are the key places. So I tell realtors ahead of time now, go
Find
look for
those.
those things up front, because if it's missing now, I'd rather know now that it's missing, because there is a workaround with it. It's called an IBITS letter. We have to order what's called an IBITS letter. And those sometimes can take 10 days to get.
Yeah, so that's a 10-day
And that's
extension.
why I try and
Exactly.
find out ahead of time, do we need an IBITS letter ordered? And they're not cheap either. So I don't want to just order them right away because they're like $175. So I don't want
Right.
to order them, and because that's spending the customer's
Yeah,
money, right? And I
right.
don't want to do that if the data plate is there. So you guys, realtors, just
Yeah,
look for that
heads
stuff
up.
ahead of time, heads up,
Yeah, a lot
so
of-
that we can close within that 30-day time frame.
Exactly. Yeah, I have a lot of new realtors watching this, so you guys stay tuned just for a second and get your pen and paper, and we're going to go over. am Jessie Walters from Charles Rutenberg. I'm here today with DeLynn Gaston from the mortgage firm. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
We're talking about mobile homes still and manufactured housing, the difference between, basically a cement block home and a mobile home on financing and tips and inspections. And so we've gone down the list quite a bit. And you can always reach out to DeLynn for tips if you're a new realtor and you're watching the show and you're one of the ones, because I have some that I mentor and I always say, watch the show for information. Yeah. And there's your contact information. So you can, and you guys can always call me too. And if you're listing one, I want you to call me for sure. So that, and if you need to buy one too.
And yes, if you're listing one, definitely.
Yeah, that'd be
because
awesome.
You've been through the gamut on these.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I know all these.
And
I'm
you
like,
have
yeah,
to
this
know
happened.
this stuff.
Yeah.
You have to know this stuff. If you are a listing agent, and if you are a buyer's agent and one of your buyers are interested in these, you need to know this stuff.
Yeah, before you get out there, because then you'll know what you're looking for. You know?
Right.
So that's good. So, and we were just talking to you on the break, the minimum square foot housing so we knew the year.
Right.
There was a year.
1976, and then the
1976.
square footage is 600 square feet. And that's why
Okay.
we say double wide, has to be a double wide, because
Right.
quite frankly, there's very few, most of the single wide homes are smaller than 600
Right.
square feet. So
Yeah,
that's why we
true.
always say double. But if you do happen to have a single wide that is larger than 600 square feet, believe it or not, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So that's good to know. So we got the year, we got the inspections, we got to watch how many feet you are from the sides. We got, if you have a structure that's connected, you got to call the engineering guy. You
Yeah.
got to check the straps to make sure they're up to code. And
There's skirting, make sure
skirting,
that's all
make sure the skirting's
done.
on. Well, water testing, and I think we're good.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So
And
there's
then-
so many
yeah.
there's so many moving parts on these,
Yeah,
right?
because usually single family home, I'm just like, well, you're going to get a home inspector. They're going to check all that.
Right.
And then, and then also flood zones with manufactured homes. Do we know any?
Yeah, they don't like them at all.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think we're going, right? We're not going into. So that's why if you're, let's see, where's going to be mobile home on stilts? Hudson. Hudson has mobile homes on stilts. So maybe, I don't know if they're still in the flood zone, but maybe.
And
depending.
actually, I know that's funny that you say that, because I actually did do a loan. One of the properties that I did do was on stilts.
Okay.
It's a manufactured home on stilts. I know that was like very surprising to me, but it's right on the canal. It's gorgeous,
Yeah.
beautiful home.
Yeah.
They redid so much like even a regular house that is like up. That first floor, that bottom floor.
Yeah, that's-
you can't do anything with
Right,
that.
no
That is
enclosing that,
storage
yeah.
only. You can't enclose that kind of thing. So
Right.
same thing with these.
Yeah, so, and then if you're wondering what the flood zone is, this is like the tip of the day. When you drive through and you see new construction and you see where that garage, how high it is, that's the flood level. That's where your house starts. So you'll see 1979, they're all on the ground. 1980, they're going up a little bit like a mound. 1985, they're up like this high. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Yeah, 80s, then you see like when you're driving, you're probably like, why are some of these houses are way up and some of them are down. Well, most likely the down ones got flooded in 1993, and
Right.
the ones, that's the new flood code, 1990. You know what I mean? They keep
Right.
going up. But yeah, so if you drive out further, you can see them in Pinellas, the new builds. You can see where the flood is everywhere.
And if you're looking at houses and you have a nice ranch right here, and then you
Yeah.
have on either side of it,
Yeah.
chances are your flood insurance is going to be a little high.
Yeah, you might be in AE or X zone. And they're like, "What's that?" Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, that's me driving. As I always my other tip of the day is I look where their air conditioners are too. So say you have a ranch and they're all ranch, and you're like, that tip didn't work. There's nobody with a high house. Well, who has a brand new AC unit, and where is it at? On the house.
Is it on?
Yeah, they're on in
Stilts
St. Pete.
itself.
You can go in St. Pete and see 1975 and 1985 the homes, and you can see their air conditioners as people are getting them replaced. Yeah, it's so sad for us in Florida. We're so used to it though. Other people are like, why is the AC up there?
The AC is above the windows.
Yeah. We want the AC to be safe. Who cares about you guys?
That's scary.
I'm just kidding. That's horrible. But that is how I judge the flood zones, though.
But that's a great idea,
Yeah.
because so many times. And another tip of the day, right? So when you go to the county records, the Pasco County or Pinellas County or whatever property appraisers, and if it says flood zone -- that doesn't mean you're not in a flood zone.
Right. Yeah.
That just means someone didn't look it up.
Yeah.
That's all
It
that
means that
means.
record, yeah. Well,
So many
especially the
times
old
people
records.
tell me that, oh, no, it
not a
says, you
flood
know,
zone.
so I'll look it
Yeah.
up. No, it says dash. Yeah, so it's not in a flood zone. It doesn't say it's in a flood zone. It just says that they didn't
Did
look
you
it
go
up.
on the flood maps? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, their air conditioning's like above the windows, like you said. Yeah, you probably need flood insurance. But yeah, I was surprised one of the last ones I sold, like Veterans Village or Seven Springs, a lot of that area, because the Anclote
Yes,
goes in there.
wines in there, and those are most of those homes are in flood
Flood
zones.
zone, yeah.
Yeah.
And I even tried to, because you can send the elevation certificates in to try to lessen the flood insurance for the customer, the one that you just helped me with in there.
Right,
And
yeah.
it didn't, because normally they give you a little bit, but they would not budge in there. But
Really?
but it's because the Anclote, believe it or not, it has a little teeny fingers that go through all the way
Yeah, it does.
to Starkey, up to the Starkey Park, they have Anclote goes in there too.
Wow.
Yeah, so part of River Ridge has flood zones in there too. But a lot of those in River Ridge, you can put the elevation certificate in and it takes them right out, or it really lessens it. So some of them aren't in at
That's
all.
why it's important.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to get that elevation. And yes,
Yeah.
it's going to cost money. If the seller doesn't have it, it's going to cost money. But
Right.
most of the time I tell people, ask the seller for it.
Yeah,
ask
they might
them
have
to,
it. Yeah.
right. Because chances are they have flood insurance.
Right,
They had to
exactly.
get it as well. Now it might
Yeah.
have changed since then, but at least it gives us a starting place, right?
Right.
So that we
Right.
know.
But mobile homes as a
As a rule,
As
they
a
don't
rule, no.
necessarily like them. So I have one
flood,
right now. It's really
so
fun.
we'll
Yeah,
say
I
no.
know. They'll
And
do them, but
investment too, no.
yeah, investment, no. They'll
Okay.
do the mobile homes in a flood zone, but I have one right now that we can't do because it's a PUD and in a flood zone and a
Right.
manufactured home.
Oh, okay.
The perfect trifecta.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is this particular, it's a mobile home park, and this particular
it's a-
park, I just closed one like a month ago, but it's at the other side of the park and there's no flood zone there. So a mobile home PUD we can do, planned unit development is what
Right.
that stands for. So we can do those, but can't do it if it's in the flood zone. So this side of the park is in a flood zone,
So
an A zone,
does it
and I
look
can't
like
do the
it's,
loan.
does it look like something they could get an elevation certificate for or no?
So I don't know, because on the lending side, I never
Right.
see the property.
Right.
I see
yeah.
pictures, I go
Yeah,
online, but I never
true.
drive out to it
True,
to see
me, I
it.
do like a scientific evaluation as much as I'm like, well, does this look higher? And I'm like, forget it, Yeah, if I feel
know.
like I can save it, if they love it so much that we have to try to save it, then I'll.
And that's one of the ones that I said, ask the seller if they have an elevation.
It takes like a
because-
month for them to re-put it in the flood zone. I mean, out of the flood zone if you submit it to FEMA and what's it called? I just did one, but I can't remember the name. But if that's another class. I did another show on that, on how to take your property or to try to get it, out of the flood zone.
good.
Yeah, to help everybody, because a lot of people are just pay their flood insurance. They don't even know it's an option,
Right.
But I've done my brother's. He lives in a
Nice.
lake. He was paying like $1,300 a year. I've done like a whole bunch of like, just give me your email address. I'll do it. Tell me if they send anything back. So I've saved a couple people out of the flood zone. So that's turned
I
out
have
good.
somebody right now. I've got to think of who it is, and I'll talk to you about them afterward. But
Uh-huh.
but yeah, it's like the back corner of their property.
Yeah,
so
then you'd
it's
be
not
able to.
the house, but it's the back corner.
If the structure's not in, you can get them out. So I had one in Jasmine Lakes. There's a lake flood zone, and I'm like, so as long as the structure's up high enough, or they don't, because it's not really a flood zone, but that water, if it touches your property, I don't know. Pasco went through, and so did Pinellas, and it was like if you're on a lake, even though you're like a quarter mile up, or you're not a quarter mile, but like a quarter acre up from
Right.
it, they put you in a flood zone. So those are easy to get out, depending on if you weren't and now you are. Those are the ones that I'm like, I can I can help you with the elevation certificate, and you're going to get your survey anyway.
Right,
It's cheaper to
right.
get it done right then.
at
so.
the same time.
Yeah. So, but it's great to talk about the, finding a house that's affordable for people in the area. Well, in
Right.
Pasco, there is hardly any. I just did a show on that too, on mobile homes for sale in Hillsborough. I hardly get any, there's hardly any listings for mobile homes for sale right now. But Pasco has a lot of them, and so does Hernando, you know.
And I think, like I said, I'm just seeing a lot more all of the sudden.
Right.
For whatever reason, and I think it's because the inventory is so low right now that our first timers, like we said, the price point is much more palatable for them.
Right.
So I'm seeing a lot more mobile homes than I have in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And which is fine. And I'm trying to tell people, don't be afraid of them. Just walk into them with your eyes wide open. That's pretty much my point that I'm trying to get today. They're definitely different. Definitely take a lot more hoops to jump through. Time, if you're a realtor writing a contract on that, give a little more time on those in case we do have to get engineering reports, we do have to get IBITS letters, things like that. Those are all things that are out of our control. So, we want everybody to close on time. Give us the time to do what we have to do.
Right. Yeah, and then you're not surprised when you have to get the extension if you're expecting, if you have this list, that would actually be great to have a little list for, I guess, even realtors who don't. And not that they don't know what they're doing, but realtors who are kind of new at the first time in, you don't know exactly what to look for. You're used to single family residence, and you see this mobile home, and you're like, oh, what about,
and you know what? And if you're a listing agent, if you've listed, then it would be great to have that checklist there.
Exactly.
The data plates are here. Here's where this is. Here's where this is. Have everything done so people know.
And I had the one that was a nightmare. Believe it or not, I had the seller who's great. But we had bought it through. It was a HUD foreclosure, so he had bought it from me too through the HUD site. So you can buy a non-occupied dwelling as an investor. And so when you buy them through there, you get title insurance if you pay for it, but then they don't necessarily go, here's all your stuff. And if you're paying cash, they don't, I hate to say they don't care, but they're happy to see you come and buy the house and then go, So we had bought it through them. So we weren't, it was such an easy transaction. I mean, if you know how to fill out paperwork though for HUD, because that's a whole nother program, but a lot of realtors mess that up pretty good because you have so many days, and a lot of realtors they don't know to overnight. They don't know they've got to overnight the packages and all that stuff to actual, to the HUD, to HUD Homestar. Yeah, you're unlimited time. So he had bought it and it went smooth, and he had called my office. There's 2,300 agents, and he needed one who knew how to do that. So I got the lead, and so we were friends, and then he fixed it up and ripped out the kitchen with the stuff in it.
Data plate in it.
Yeah, and the kitchen looked great, and I didn't even notice at the time. But I learned some very valuable lessons on that. I mean, the whole thing was so, I'll never forget the whole experience. So a 30-day close, no lie, and I know what I'm doing, turned into 6 months only because, the data plates we had to send for, everything was just...
the septic locations.
Yeah. We had to, he said the well's in the front, which is good, but we didn't actually know where. We could see the pump, but the actual well, they wanted to open it up and stuff, and we couldn't find it. So it turned into it was 101 crash on the crash course on mobile homes and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the buyers were so happy, So it turned out really good. It was worth all the work, But it was a little bit of a nightmare. But that's how you learn, with a lot of it, So.
But hopefully we can educate ahead of time.
Right? Yeah, and hopefully they're like, wow, she did such a good job. She was out here digging with a shovel at 8 o'clock at night with my poor husband. I'm like, we got to go out. And he's like, what are we doing? I'm like, we're finding a well. Just kidding.
Just grab a shovel.
Yeah.
If I said to my husband, grab a shovel, let's go, he'd say, what?
Do I need to call 911?
No, I don't think so.
I know. My husband's like, now what? Now what are we doing? Like, yeah. So and
shovel, some rope.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, grab that duct tape.
The worst part was about this whole mobile. Yeah, I know, it's horrible. It's Halloween too, right? The worst part is that the pump for the well started here, and it was the back of the mobile home. So we literally went under the whole mobile home and crawled, digging, and it came out the front. And then we thought they were sharing a well with a neighbor because then it started going up in a hill. And then an hour later, we found it, and everything was fine. Later. But it was
crazy.
It was
See,
nuts.
that's a lot. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, I
And
should've got
that
a
brings up
bonus on
something
that.
good too, shared wells.
Yeah.
I get that question a lot, yes. And again, just like places where, when it's out there a little bit,
Yeah.
that happens sometimes where, it's one well for like the community or whatever.
Right.
And we're talking about private roads as well. Definitely some things to know about because there's some requirements there. So even if it's a shared well, the requirements for water flow is higher, obviously, depending upon how many units are sharing this well.
Right.
Still has to go through the testing, the quality testing and things like that. So yes, it's allowable, but there's definitely some further restrictions with that.
Yeah, and the other thing we were talking about too was the so if you're purchasing a mobile home and you're on a dirt road, that's going to be a red flag for me on the roads. So I'll always call you and say, what's the deal? Can we be on a dirt road? And then we got down to who's taking care of the roads, and
exactly, that's what it comes down to. So from a lending standpoint, it's going to be who's responsible to take care of that road. Up north, we used to say, who's going to plow it in the winter?
Right.
We obviously don't have snow down here, so but dirt roads, they get, private roads sometimes, if it's not paved, it gets, big potholes and these huge boulders and things like that. And who's going to take care of that? Because that'll lower the value of your home, right? And you don't want the value of your home lowered.
Right.
So it behooves anybody who is on that private road, let's get some kind of a maintenance, it's called a private road maintenance agreement in place. So that, because your lender is going to require it, they're going to, and again, you might have lived there for the last 15 years. 15 years ago, it wasn't a requirement. I'll tell you that right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
But now, today, it is because things have happened like that and property values have decreased because no one's taking care of the road.
Right.
And it looks like crap, and people don't want to live on a street that looks like crap.
I know they'll maintain it right in front of their property, but then they'll go through and there's bumps and and then they get to their property, it's perfect, which is great, but then it's better to have the whole, because when you're reselling, obviously, you're not going to want to go down dirt roads that are bumpy. Some people don't mind because they're in the country, but when it starts wrecking your cars and all that stuff too, it makes it less attractive for the purchaser. I had one in Brooksville, and the sand ended right at in the middle of their property. And I was like, I had anxiety because I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to be like a red flag for this road? Because you're literally, it was like a paved road, then it went dirt, and then it ended like half the way on theirs, and then it paved. And I was like, I wonder if the lender's going to say anything, but they didn't say anything about it, thank God. But I was like, some stuff, I feel like you're just stirring it up if you bring it up, but then some stuff you wish you had, to be, just ready for those questions, like you said, next seller I have with a mobile home, they have to have the actual tags and stuff like that. You have to have that all in place.
Right.
And my brother has one where he's moved a mobile home, and he wants me to sell it again. And I'm like, we already learned our lesson from the last one. Yeah, get a cash buyer, we're good.
Cash buyer, that's it.
Sorry, conventional, FHA, VA.
Yeah.
As much as we love you guys, it's not going to work.
Not going to work.
Yeah, so I guess it must. It probably does make the mobile home. If you move it, you know what I mean? So it probably does something to them. So there's, I'm sure, some reasoning for that. But thanks so much for coming today. I learned so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was very informative. And I feel like I learned a lot, and I hope you guys did too. If you have any questions, if you're buying or selling, please give me a call. I also want to thank Nightberry Title Services for always sponsoring us. They're great, and they're always available to call too. And DeLynn, Gaston, the mortgage firm, thanks again for coming.